let's talk about a little bit about patient personas. What are they? What does it mean? What does it mean to SCIO? And how we discuss this in depth with our clients. So, personas mean a lot to different folks, but they really drive the broad analytic of SCIO and how we have our clients thinking about patients and providers, institutions, etc. So when you look at a patient or a persona type, there's a number of attributes that go into valuing that patient. It's not just demographics, it's not just socioeconomic factors, and it's not just clinical factors. It's behavior and attitudinal data, understanding what triggers drive a patient's, or I should say a persona's behavior in terms of seeking care, following up with care, adherence and/or compliance. Obviously, demographic attributes, socioeconomic attributes play a role. It's a component of that. Clinical factors, truly understanding a patient's current condition, number of comorbid conditions, care gaps that are driving the thought process and treatment of those conditions. Cost and quality, how often do these patients visit the hospital and/or the physician's office? Are they compliant or adherent with their diagnostic testing, yes or no, and/or a drug regimen? Utilization, obviously, utilization of those services carries into the cost and quality part. And what that segues into is what we call risk. So risk, and again, this conversation we have with a number of clients, risk means a lot, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, especially in this time and age. But as we define risk, and as our clients define risk, risk means what is the risk of a patient persona. So we're talking number of patients scattered across the U.S. down to the zip code that have common attributes of demographics, behaviors and attitudes, and clinical factors. What is the risk of that patient or those patients becoming healthier or sicker over time? And that's defined as what do they look like in the next 12 months? So it is a predictive model, naturally based on a concurrent model of understanding where they are today, but then projecting out where are they headed. And how that risk is derived is a number of which care gaps are open and or potentially going to be closed in that next 12-month window due to the patient's care. What is the associated cost with those care gaps? Is it increasing or decreasing over time? Ultimately, we'll create a metric called high, medium, or low risk, something very simplified. We can also create deciles of risk at the patient level, but then truly understand if there is a patient that has high risk in the category for diabetes, as an example. It's not going to be the whole diabetes population. Let's just say that roughly 10% of the diabetes population is at high risk. Obviously, in today's world, that would be a large number of patients across the U.S. They have similar socioeconomic and demographic attributes, similar cost and quality attributes, clinical factors, etc. So they look and feel the same. So there's a batch of patients that you can presumably have the same behaviors and attitudes that you can presumably message to or look toward to drive care in a better direction. But that's not, that in and of itself won't carry it for you. Another component that we create is called impactability. So when we think about risk drives what are the patients at risk and how is their healthcare utilization increasing or decreasing over time. Hence, what are the costs? Why will they be non-adherent and or compliant, therefore driving up cost of care across the board? But then you also look at a measure around behaviors and attitudes called impactability. How impactable are those patients? What are the specific triggers that will enable those patients to move? Now, that message can come a couple different ways. It could come directly through the payer, which I won't say or profess today that they do a great job of doing, but I guess they would say the same thing. It could come directly from a DTC campaign through life sciences, obviously, and that's not a be-all, end-all. Or it could come through a collaboration between life sciences, payers, and providers. And that's the sort of the universe of really where you see cost and quality being driven down today. And ultimately what happens in that is when you think of market expansion, that also drives adherence and compliance of a client's drug itself. So ultimately, if you can identify who the patients have the highest amount of risk, that are the highest impactable based patients, and then you appropriate the right messages to those folks through the life sciences channel, i.e. the provider, the healthcare provider, the institution. It could be also some type of regional type messaging. You can single-handedly start to see how that risk score can be moving in the appropriate direction for those patients.